Yum! One of my favorite things to do is to eat the rice of the genmaicha. It's so delicious and so addictive. This one is roasted at high temperatures, so it almost tastes like rice crackers senbei. It's really good. Genmaicha is super interesting. It's the only tea in Japan where the main character is not the tea. It's actually the rice. So it's really unique even in Japan. So today we're going to look at how this became a tea in the first place, what kind of health benefits there are, and also even be able to make your own original genmaicha as well. Let's jump in. Some stories just have to be told in depth, so that's what we're doing today. Hi, I'm Yuki, I'm the founder of Tealife, and welcome to the second episode of Overbrewed by Yuki. Today, we're going to overbrew genmaicha. Let's start with the basics. What is genmaicha? Genmai means brown rice, and cha means tea. So genmaicha is basically brown rice mixed with tea. In a sense, it is a flavored tea. It's one of the very rare flavored teas in Japan. If you can take a look at this, you can see that the brown round objects, these are the genmai, and they're mixed in with tea. There's a high percentage of the genmai in the tea, as long as you don't eat them all like I do. But from here, you can see that the rice actually does a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the taste. The rice gives it a very strong signature aroma of the genmaicha, which everyone really loves. It's a very heartwarming aroma. So in that sense, it is an aroma-forward type of tea, kind of similar to a hojicha or a kyobancha, where the aroma is the main component rather than the body of the taste. However, the unique thing about genmaicha is that it has both. So since it also mixes with green tea, it also has the body as well. So while it is still an aroma-focused tea, it also has a little bit of a substance or a body that comes with it. That makes it really unique. Now, sometimes what's really interesting is that when you look at your genmaicha, you might find white popcorn inside the tea as well. It's not actually popcorn. It's just genmai, the brown rice. When you roast them, it would sometimes burst and it would look exactly like small popcorn, and they'll have that in the tea itself. That's why it's sometimes called popcorn tea. Popcorn tea is a nickname of genmaicha, and you can find that nickname at shops sometimes. I don't have that popcorn variant to show you with me today. However, I did want to show you a few variants of genmaicha to show you the range of genmaicha that you could see. So this is the genmaicha that I just showed you already, and this is another type. You can see that these two are two different types of genmaicha. The one I showed you already, the one on the left is a original genmaicha. It's a brown rice genmai tea that's mixed with tamaryukcha. So that's a relatively rare type of genmaicha because tamaryukcha itself is not necessarily a mainstream type of Japanese tea. However, they work really magnificently. Now, the one on your right, my left, looks very different, obviously. You can see the pale streaks in the tea. So this is a karigane genmaicha. It's a stem tea. So what this is it mixes the stem of the tea leaf, the tea tree, with tea leaves, and then on top of that, it mixes it with the brown rice kernels. So the stem part of the tea, what it does is it adds a little bit more of a fresh note that complements again really well with the genmai, with the brown rice as well. And not only the tea leaves, you can also see, if you look closely, there's a big difference in how the rice looks as well. So the variance in the type of rice that you would use for each of these genmaicha variants is also very different too. So there's lots of very different combinations that you can actually find with genmaicha, which is part of the fun. As you know now, the genmaicha is so delicious, great aroma, so fun with so many variations. However, maybe one of the greatest attributes to this genmaicha is how affordable it is. It's actually a very economical tea option, although it's so delicious. And that's probably one of the reasons why Genmaicha is so popular. Now, here's the interesting part. In Japan, tea is never flavored. It's a part of Japanese culture. There's a strong preference to keep things simple and true to what they really are. So for example, if you take sushi, it's very simple. You never really mix things. You have the fish, which is the main thing, and then everything else, the rice, the soy sauce, the wasabi, the pickled ginger, all these are just complementary stuff. It doesn't really change the main substance itself. So it's only when sushi goes overseas where you start to see things like the California roll, where it kind of layers different types of ingredients on top. So the Japanese culture is really true to simplicity and to the main ingredient not being diluted by other tastes. So Genmaicha is really an anomaly. Yes, in recent years, we do have a little bit more variations in terms of the flavored tea. So we started to mix green tea with some different types of fruits like yuzu. That tastes really good. Also, green tea with sakura tastes really good as well. So we have a little bit more of a variance these days. So Genmaicha was really the only flavored tea that took hold of the Japanese tea community for a very long time, probably until the late 20th century when the Western teas started to come in and become popular, such as the Earl Grey. Until then, it was really only the Genmaicha. Why did this happen? Now, the origin story of the Genmaicha is relatively unclear. However, there are a few theories. And when you look at those theories, there's one thing that's clear, at least. It's that the Genmaicha did not become popular because of the flavor. It became popular because of necessity. So next, let's talk about the history or the origin of the Genmaicha. One of the most commonly told stories about the origin of the Genmaicha is the Kagami-mochi story. Now, what is the Kagami-mochi in the first place? Kagami-mochi it's a New Year's decoration. It's kind of like a Christmas decoration in a sense because it's a way that Japanese families would welcome the New Year. But basically what you do is at the end of the year, you would stack two big round pieces of mochi on top of each other with a little bit of a decoration, and then you place it in your house. And then by the second week, it depends on the area you live in Japan, but by around the second week of January, you will break it open and start to eat it. That's basically the Kagami-mochi. The story goes that a tea merchant in Kyoto in the early Showa period, which is around the 1920s, they had a Kagami-mochi and they didn't want it to go to waste. So they were thinking of ways to use the Kagami-mochi's mochi. So they decided to break off the pieces of Kagami-mochi into small pieces and they roasted it and then put it into the tea. And that's said to be the origin of the Genmaicha. Now, this isn't really Genmaicha because it's mochi, it's not brown rice. So there are a little bit of a difference here. And later in this video, we'll try to see if we can make this version of the Genmaicha and see how it tastes. That'll be a fun part of this video. But nonetheless, over time, it's said that the mochi gradually changed to a more available form, which is the rice, which became the Genmaicha. Now, the historical backdrop of this era, of this period in Japan, is really important to truly understand and appreciate the origin of the Genmaicha, in my view. So this is an era of extreme hardship for the Japanese people. It was post-World War I. World War I was very good economically for Japan, but after that, it was of economic instability. It was huge instability. And on top of that, what happened in 1923, it was the Kanto Daishinsai, which is the great earthquake of Kanto. This was a huge earthquake. You probably don't know about this if you're not Japanese. However, it's probably historically one of the worst earthquakes in human history. Anywhere between 100,000 to 140,000 people died, which is between 5 to 7 times the Great East earthquake that happened in 2011 in Japan. So that's how bad it was. Literally, the greater Tokyo area, that whole area, it burned to ashes. And it's said that 37% of the GDP or the GNP of Japan was lost in that earthquake alone. 37%. The damage is immeasurable. And to make matters worse, remember, the bad times only really started. The global depression is going to come in from here. The degree of hardships for the Japanese people at this period is unfathomable. Tea was expensive, so people started to look for alternatives. And it's understandable that it was at this period of time that people started to try to create new tea that was more economically practical as everyday teas. If you recall from a recent video that I did about the hojicha was also born in the same period. It was the 1920s, the era of the hardships. For a hojicha, you take old tea or bad quality tea, and in a sense, you can recycle that by roasting it, and you can make it a lot more pleasant that way. So in the same vein, the genmaicha, you take tea and you mix it with rice, which is a little bit more economical and more accessible. And by doing so, you can dilute the cost of the tea while also making it delicious as well. These new forms of everyday tea, the hojicha and the genmaicha, these emerged and they spread in these ages of hardship. To me, it's not really a coincidence that the taste of these teas that spread were also heartwarming and were meant to kind of give relaxation, especially because it was such a hard period of time. Now let's talk about the health benefits of genmaicha. This is where it starts to get interesting because it's not just the green tea anymore. It's a combination of the green tea and the brown rice. And by combining these two, it starts to change things. The first thing is the caffeine. The caffeine in genmaicha is relatively low. So let's say 100 milliliters of genmaicha, you would usually have 10 milligrams of caffeine, which is very low. The reason for this is the simple fact that the green tea is mixed with rice. It's diluted. So just because it's half and half, you basically get half the caffeine of normal green tea, which is very low. So usually a sencha would have 20 milligrams of caffeine per 100 milliliters of water. So genmaicha again is half of sencha, and it's basically about a quarter of coffee as well. So it's relatively low. And not only that, it also benefits from this substance called L-theanine, which is found in green tea. This works with all green tea, but this L-theanine is a great substance because what it does is it kind of counteracts with the caffeine. While the caffeine gives you this sense of high energy, the L-theanine, it calms it down. And overall, it gives you this sense of calm alertness. So that's what you get from green tea in general, but you also benefit from that in the genmaicha as well. And this caffeine component is one of the big reasons why genmaicha is very popular. Since it's something that's not as much of a stimulant, it's low in caffeine, lots of people can easily drink this type of tea. Even the elderly people, even kids, even at night, it's a relatively easier drink to consume. Now in genmaicha, you still get the main health benefit of green tea, which is the catechins. If you haven't heard of catechins before, it's a type of natural compound that you can find in Japanese green tea. It's a type of polyphenol, and it's said to be a very powerful antioxidant. This catechin is said to be the main driver of most of the health benefits found in Japanese green tea, which is a lot. It's said to be one of the most powerful antioxidants. There's lots of studies that show that it's a very strong immunity booster, and it prevents lots of different types of chronic diseases. Chronic diseases such as stroke or heart attack, liver diseases, cardiovascular diseases, dementia, different types of cancer, and so on and so forth. You can actually taste the catechins in the tea itself. It's the astringency component of the tea. It's not necessarily a bad taste as long as it's not too much, but it gives it a little bit of a structure. It gives it the full body of the taste. And when you feel that, when you have the dry pulling sensation in the back of the tongue, that's the astringency. When you get that, you can be assured that you're drinking that catechin, which is really good for your body. Now for genmaicha, again, because you're mixing green tea with rice, the amount of catechins will be diluted. So you wouldn't have as much catechins in the Genmaicha as compared to other types of green tea. So if you're just purely looking at it from a health benefit perspective, especially the health benefits that are coming from the green tea catechins, then the Genmaicha may not be the most efficient way of absorbing the health benefits in that sense. But you'll still get a fair amount of the catechins and it's going to be very good for you. Now, when we look at the rice side of the Genmaicha, there's a few compounds that's worth talking about in terms of health benefits, especially if it's a Genmaicha that's made from brown rice. So there's a few substances. The first one is the gamma oryzanol. This is something that supports the cholesterol balance, the lipid levels, and the blood sugar in your body. Another substance is the GABA. This is something that supports the calming effect. So it's a neurotransmitter that helps you give relaxation. It's a very powerful relaxation agent. And then maybe the third one is the vitamin E, which is, I'm sure you're aware of vitamin E, but it's a very strong antioxidant. It's a very famous antioxidant. It's sometimes called the anti-aging vitamin. Now, a lot of sources cite that these nutrients that I just talked about are benefits of the Genmaicha. But I have to be real here. Honestly, although these compounds do exist within the brown rice, they're not really water soluble. So they don't really melt into the water that easily. So unfortunately, you're not able to really absorb too much meaningful amounts if you're just drinking the Genmaicha itself. However, if you're like me and if you like to eat the Genmaicha, then that's a different story. So overall, Genmaicha is an extremely healthy drink. You get the health benefits of Japanese green tea, while you can also shave off some of the caffeine while adding some of the relaxation effect as well. So it's really a great drink. And I think I have you convinced that you should drink Genmaicha more. Now that I was able to do this, let's talk about how you should choose the right Genmaicha. Now, how do you choose Genmaicha? Well, choosing a Genmaicha is actually very easy. It's extremely forgiving, and it's also very inexpensive, so it's not something that you should stress over. Yes, if you find a really good Genmaicha, you'll have a very great experience, but what I'm saying is that the floor for this tea is extremely high. It's extremely difficult to go completely wrong with this tea. I think it's also important to say that there's lots and lots of different types of Genmaicha. As mentioned, Genmaicha is a combination of tea and also rice. And there's lots of different types of tea and lots of different types of rice as well. And if you combine them, there's an infinite number of options or possibilities you can have with your Genmaicha. That could feel a little bit overwhelming, but I wouldn't approach this as like a problem to solve. It's more of something that you can enjoy and explore. Because the truth is, most of the Genmaicha, they're quite good. So instead of trying to find the perfect one, you can try to enjoy a few and see what you like. Now, there are a few things that's worth noting regarding the quality of the Genmaicha. And the first thing is the popcorn. So as I mentioned, the Genmaicha sometimes comes with popcorn-like structures in the tea. And this is due to the roasting of brown rice. They would pop the brown rice kernels and it'll look like popcorn. And this is where the nickname popcorn tea comes from as well. But here's the thing, the popcorn, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a higher quality Genmaicha. In fact, it's usually, generally speaking, it's usually the opposite. Usually if you have popcorn in your Genmaicha, it's usually an indicator of a lower quality Genmaicha. And the reason for this is because when the brown rice kernels pop, they lose the flavors, they lose the intensity of the roasty aroma. And that's why it's considered to be a lower quality Genmaicha. The second thing you want to watch out for are tea bags. Genmaicha is very often found in tea bag form, and just as an example, the other day when I went to Dondonnoki supermarket near our place, they have lots of Japanese tea, they have lots of Genmaicha as well, but most of the Genmaicha, except for one, was actually in tea bag form. Now, to be fair, Genmaicha works pretty well in tea bag form, so it's not too bad in that sense. However, I would still recommend loose leaf tea. First, the quality of the tea inside the tea bags are usually a lower grade. And that's kind of how tea bags tend to work because tea bags, they kind of confine the tea, so it's hard to extract. In order to extract, you have to use smaller particles. So that's why you end up with lower quality tea, like broken particles like a konacha, and you stuff it inside the tea bag. So you end up with lots of relatively low quality tea inside the tea bags. So that's part one. Second is the bag itself. Now, for example, the paper-based tea bags, these are a very economical option. However, it's really hard to extract the flavors of the tea outside into the water because it restricts the water flow so much. Now, there are some plastic-based pyramid-shaped tea bags which are really good for extraction. However, these have their own problems. So based on some research, it shows that these plastic tea bags, they emit millions and millions of nanoplastics and microplastics that may be harmful for your body. So I really recommend you stay away from these. And recently, we see more plant-based tea bags, which are also pyramid shaped, so they're excellent for extraction. And since they're biodegradable, they're not harmful for your body either. So this is really good. However, the issue with this is they're relatively expensive. So if you're buying tea bags with this material, maybe you might be paying more for the tea bag itself compared to the tea leaves inside the tea bag. So that's why overall, although it is a little bit more tedious to prepare, I do recommend loose leaf tea. Now that we've chosen our genmaicha, let's talk about how we make the genmaicha. There's two main ways of making genmaicha. They're both excellent. One is the hot brewing, and then the other is the cold brewing. Again, they're very good both ways. They're different expressions of the same tea. Let's talk about the hot brewing first. Now, more than anything, if there's instructions on the back of your pack of genmaicha, follow those instructions. Because depending on the type of genmaicha, the brewing methods would be quite different, and that's really important. But generally speaking, genmaicha usually uses lower quality tea leaves with the rice doing lots of heavy lifting in terms of creating the taste of the genmaicha. So lots of the aromatic work will be done by the rice. And to maximize this, what you want to do is you want to use the water temperature that's hot as possible. So you actually want to use boiling water temperature, which is not common for Japanese green tea, to infuse genmaicha. Okay, let's quickly show you how to make a hot brew genmaicha. It's very simple, it's very easy. We'll use the original genmaicha that I showed you earlier to make this genmaicha. Okay, let's hot brew a genmaicha. As you've seen before, this is the original genmaicha. As you can see, the brown rice mixed in with the original tea. So we'll brew this, and then this is a teapot that we'll use. In Japan, this is called a dobin, which is a relatively larger sized teapot. And the characteristic is that the handle is made from a different material. And this is a typical shape for a dobin. And the reason why we use a dobin is because since we use 100 degrees water, so boiling water, if we use a normal teapot with the handle being the same material, it's going to be extremely hot. So that's why this dobin is very useful because the handle is a different material. The heat won't transfer and you won't burn your hands basically. So that's what this dobin is. It's very suitable for tea like genmaicha or hojicha, but honestly, for genmaicha, you can use anything that you want. That would work. Now, in terms of the infusion, a good place to start is about 4 grams of genmaicha to around 200 milliliters of water. And again, for the temperature, we'll use boiling water. Then steep for about 30 seconds. It's going to be very quick. So let's do that. So weigh this on a scale. Okay, so we have 4 grams of genmaicha in the dobin right now. And let's get the water. Okay, we have our boiling water, and we're going to add 200 milliliters of water here. And then we'll close the lid and we'll wait for just 30 seconds. Okay, so it's 30 seconds. We're going to pour the genmaicha into the cup. Oh, the capacity might not be enough for 200 milliliters. Now, as always, you want to make sure you pour to the last drop because that's always key for any type of Japanese green tea. This is where all the flavors reside at the end. And then you'll notice that the aroma of the genmaicha will come up immediately. The roasted rice notes will just open up and smell delicious. Not sure if you can see the tea leaves in the teapot. Okay, so I think that's good enough. Now, before we drink, we're gonna let it sit a little bit because it's very hot. And if it's too hot, you're not gonna be able to taste anything. You're gonna burn yourself as well. So we'll wait a bit and then we'll try to see how it tastes. Now, while we wait for the genmaicha to cool down, I'll talk a little bit about how you want to infuse other types of genmaicha. So for example, the karigani genmaicha that I showed you earlier, the stem tea version, that's a pretty high quality tea that's mixed with the rice. And if in this case, you don't want to use boiling water to extract the tea because it's going to be a little bit of a waste. You want to also enjoy the quality sweetness and the umami of the tea as well. For this case, what you want to do is you want to use 70 to 80 degrees water, and you want to infuse it a little bit longer so you get a little bit more of the deeper notes, the sweetness, the umami, and the deeper notes, not only the aroma of the rice. And that's the way to kind of extract those taste components. So again, it's really important to follow the instructions on the packet of your genmaicha. And if there's no instructions, then you just use boiling water to extract. Okay, let's see how the taste of the genmaicha, the original genmaicha that we just infused is. And hope you can see the watercolor. It's a golden color because the rice, the brown rice affects the color a fair bit. So that's why it's a very golden color. Itadakimasu. Nice. So it's very light, very aromatic. The flavors of the rice really stand out. So it's really heartwarming, beautiful. I like this genmaicha a lot. But the thing about genmaicha again is it's not really only the aroma. It also has the substance. It has the taste. So you can feel the full-bodied flavors of the genmaicha as well. Yeah. Okay. Now let's talk about cold brewing genmaicha. You might be surprised, but cold brewing genmaicha is delicious. It's really fantastic. You might feel that maybe the aroma won't stand out as much when you cold brew it. Now, of course, it's not as much as the hot brew, but you still get a lot of the genmaicha aroma in the tea. So it's really fantastic, and not only that, it's super refreshing as well. On top of that, you can further reduce the amount of caffeine. So overall, it's a really recommended way of enjoying your genmaicha. To make it, you can take about 8 grams to 10 grams of genmaicha tea leaves, and then you put it in a plastic container, and then you pour about 1 liter of water into the plastic container, and then you just put that plastic container into a refrigerator and let it seep for 3 to 4 hours. And then you'll have your cold brew genmaicha ready to drink. That's really it. No precision required. It's really forgiving. And after the 3 to 4 hours, what you get is something like this. So I made this earlier, but this is a ice or cold brew genmaicha. I just took the cold brew genmaicha and put it into a glass so you can see. So it's a little bit more clear perhaps than the hot brew genmaicha that we just made earlier, but it looks like this. And you can still smell the aroma of the rice. It's really nice. But yeah, it's fantastic. It's a really refreshing drink. You can taste the strong profile of the rice even in cold brew, and you can get the green tea flavors as well. It's a tea that's really easy to drink. It's suitable for hot weathers like the weather in Singapore, so it's a really recommendation. So that's the hot and cold brewing of genmaicha. Which do you think you like better? And tell me in the comments below. Now let's talk about the different types of genmaicha. Let's start with what I would call the common genmaicha. Traditionally, genmaicha is made from what's called bancha. Bancha is a tea it's not exactly a high quality tea. It's a tea that's coming from later harvesting seasons of the year, so it wouldn't be first flush. It's probably not second flush, maybe third flush or even later than third flushes. So these are relatively low quality tea leaves that you would use for the Genmaicha. Genmaicha was never intended to be a luxury tea. It was more of a common everyday tea, and that's why bancha really fit perfectly with Genmaicha. Bancha is more light, it's less intense, and when it mixes with rice, what it does is it allows the rice to come forward. So it was a perfect mix in that sense. So that bancha-based genmaicha, that's the baseline. Now from there, the different types of genmaicha really start to open up. There's lots of different types of alterations, if you will, but there's almost perhaps a different type of genmaicha for every single type of Japanese tea that exists. So for a more refined taste, you might have a sencha genmaicha, where you mix the sencha in with the genmaicha. For a deeper taste, you might have a gyokuro genmaicha. It's more on the umami side rather than the aroma side. Then you might have the karigane genmaicha or the kukicha genmaicha, where you mix in the stem tea with the genmai, and it adds this nice little, the fresh notes of the stem mixed in with the brown rice, and that's delicious as well. The genmaicha that we showed earlier in the video, the original genmaicha, that's a genmaicha that mixes the genmai with tamaryokucha, and that gives it a more mild profile, which is delicious as well. And then, although not common, I've never tried this, but I've seen hojicha with brown rice as well. So that's a hojicha genmaicha. That's really interesting. Another very common type of genmaicha that you might find is the matcha-iri genmaicha, which means that you have a genmaicha and it's mixed with matcha. What it does is it adds another extra layer of mellowness in depth to the profile of the genmaicha, and it'll be very evident because the genmaicha itself will look like a green tint, and that's also very delicious as well. Now, on top of the different types of Japanese tea that we just mentioned, there's also lots of different types of rice. So it's genmaicha, so usually we would start off with adding genmai, which is brown rice. But actually, these days, it's more common to see white rice used as the rice parts of the genmaicha. So it could be brown rice, it could be white rice. It can also even be mochi rice. So it could be glutinous rice as well. And these will all have its different characteristics and profiles. Now, even with the same type of rice, even if it's like a white rice, if you use different types of cultivars in the white rice, it'll give you a different profile as well, because some of them will be more sweet, some of them will be more aromatic. And so the combination of genmaicha is really infinite. You can have lots of different types of flavors, and it's truly a very playful tea. Okay, so now that you know exactly what genmaicha is, I'm going to show you 3 things you can do to really enjoy or have fun, in a sense, with genmaicha. The first thing is, let's make our own original genmaicha. Let's make our own original genmai and mix it with tea. This is going to be really fun. I'll show you how exactly to do this. The second thing is, let's travel back in time. Let's go back to the origin story that we talked about, and let's try making and tasting the original mochi-based genmaicha that is said to be the origin of the genmaicha. Let's see how that tastes like and see if it's different or not. And thirdly, I'm going to show you how to make a delicious cup of Genmai-Chazuke. So it's not just a drink anymore, it's going to be a nice breakfast. It could be a lunch as well, but maybe mainly a breakfast. Well, let's dive in. All right, let's make our own genmaicha. Once you know what genmaicha actually is, you realize that it's actually a very simple tea. All it is it's tea, and then it's also a roasted rice. So all you have to do is roast rice, and you can mix it in with your own favorite tea, and you can create your own genmai, which is actually really fun because, as I mentioned, genmaicha comes with infinite combinations, and to be able to handle those combinations with your own skill and resources, that becomes really interesting. So we're going to show you how to make the original or your original genmaicha here. Now there's a few ways to make the brown rice components of the genmaicha. And the easiest way is to just take uncooked white rice, And then you don't need any water, you don't need any oil. Just roast it on a pan. That's all. So you put the uncooked white rice and put it on the pan, and then under medium heat, you just continue to roast. Make sure it doesn't burn, so consistently move so it doesn't burn, and it will gradually turn brown, and it'll create that aroma, the nuttiness that you want. And once that's done, all you have to do is mix it with tea leaves and you're done. It'll give you a nice fragrance. And it's not the best genmaicha that you'll get, but you can get by with it if you're just cooking it at home. So that's the easy way, but today we're going to show you a better way to do that, to make the genmaicha actually taste like a genmaicha that's being sold at shops. So here are the steps. First, you want to take white rice. And I think it should be Japanese rice, but I think you can use any type of white rice as well. And it doesn't even have to be white rice because obviously genmaicha is brown rice. You can use brown rice, you can use glutinous rice, but just because of the accessibility, perhaps you can start with white rice. And if you have Japanese white rice, all the better. So let's take white rice, and then you want to cook it. You want to cook it a little bit hard. So you don't want to use the normal amount of water to steam cook. You want to use 80% of the water. A bit hard cooked Japanese white rice is what you're aiming for. So let's do that first. That's step one. And then once that's complete, you want to take it out of the jar, and then you want to dry that rice. So you want to take it out of the jar, you want to lay it out, and then cook it in the oven to dry at low heat. So 120 degrees Celsius, something like that. And then in the oven to make sure to try to evaporate all the humidity from the rice. So that's step number two. Once you do that, you want to take that from the oven, and then similar to the first method that we mentioned, you want to take that rice and in the pan, you want to roast it. So take it and then in the pan, medium heat again, and make sure you don't want to burn the rice. So you want to continuously move the pan as you roast it. But you don't need water, you don't need any kind of oil. You just want to make sure that you continue to roast it. After a while, those rice, they'll start to turn brown. And unlike the first method that we mentioned, because it's cooked already, you'll start to see it kind of, it won't exactly become a popcorn if it's white rice, but you'll see it start to kind of flare up, and it'll look like genmaicha. It'll start to develop that great aroma, and when you munch on it, it'll taste delicious as well. Now, once you have that, then most of your work is done. All you have to do is find your favorite Japanese green tea and then mix it with the genmai at a 1-to-1 ratio. Just mix, and then there you have it. You have your own original genmaicha. Now all you have to do is infuse and serve and enjoy. So this particular genmaicha I'm making here is I'm mixing with Uji no Sato by Taniguchi, which is a sencha. So it's a sencha genmaicha. It's a delicious sencha that I think works really well with genmai. So I'm mixing it here, and let's see how it tastes. Okay, so here's the genmaicha that we just made, as you can see. We'll see how this tastes, but before that, we'll see how it smells. So it smells fantastic. You can feel the brown rice, the roastiness, the nuttiness of the brown rice. So it's delicious. It smells delicious. Let's see how it tastes now. Mm. It tastes really good. It tastes it, it tastes just like genmaicha, and that's exactly what we wanted. So I think I could have used a little bit more sencha. I think the body is a little bit light, so I'd rather have it a little bit stronger. And I don't think I was able to mix it 1-to-1. I think I have a little bit more of the rice compared to the sencha. So if I were to try again, I would try to add a little bit more sencha when I mix it. But so therefore, I have a little bit of a light genmaicha. However, I get lots of the nuttiness and the roastiness of the brown rice lifting into the as aroma. And then I still get the body of the sencha as well. So I think we were able to create a very delicious genmaicha. I'm very satisfied with our creation today. All right, let's move on. Okay, so next, let's try tasting and making the original Genmaicha. And remember, the original Genmaicha is when it was first invented, according to legends in the 1920s, it wasn't exactly made from brown rice. It was actually made from mochi because they diced the Kagami-mochi and put it into the tea, and then they made the original, or what's said to be the original Genmaicha. So let's see how exactly that tastes. Personally, I'm really excited about this experiment. What we'll do is, we don't have Kagami-mochi in this time of year, unfortunately. So we'll just buy some normal mochi at the supermarket and we'll break it into pieces. We'll roast that on a pan, kind of like how we did for creating our own original genmaicha. And then we'll mix it with the tea and see how it tastes. So here's the mochi we'll use. I got this at our nearby Donki supermarket, which is a Japanese supermarket. We'll dice this into small parts. I think the idea is to try to make the size consistent as possible. So that's what we'll try to do here. Similar to the genmaicha, we'll roast it on the pan. No water, no oil. Since it's mochi, I'm worried it might get sticky. Let's see how it holds. And we'll try to make the color a little bit darker brown. Okay, now that we have this, we'll let it cool down a little before we start to mix it with the tea. And then now that it's cool, we'll mix it with green tea leaves. We'll use a 1-to-1 ratio, just like genmaicha. And this is how it looks like. So here's the mochi-based genmaicha that we just created. As you can see, it looks just like genmaicha. The watercolor is, at least. And the aroma is slightly different. It doesn't smell like genmaicha. It has a nuttiness and a roastiness. It's not as strong as the genmaicha, and it's slightly different. I can't explain how different it is, in what way it's different, but let's see how it tastes now. Okay. Hold on a second. Okay, so you taste mochi inside the tea, and it's not. I think the rice is better than mochi, honestly speaking. The mochi aroma is a little bit lighter. It doesn't mix as well. Um, it's I'm not sure if this is a good tea. I personally don't like it that much. Maybe it depends on how you make it. Going for the normal genmaicha is better than the traditional, the mochi based. Not the traditional. It's the origin of the genmaicha, and I guess it evolved into the genmai based genmaicha for a good reason. So that was good to know. That was a fun experiment. Now, the final thing I'll leave you with today is how to make the Genmai-Chazuke. This is a Ochazuke made from Genmaicha. Of course, before that, I have to explain what exactly is an Ochazuke. An Ochazuke is a comfort food in Japan. It's taking tea and then pouring it over rice, and there you have Ochazuke. It's actually as simple as that. It might sound like porridge, but it's actually a little bit different from porridge, although the positioning of the food is quite similar to the porridge. It's something that people would want if they are looking for something quick and light. It's something that's warm, and it's something very comforting. Usually people would have it for breakfast. Now, since tea and rice alone is a little bit tasteless, you would usually add toppings to that. So usually more salty toppings, so you might use grilled salmon or more pickles maybe. So pickled ume would be very common, pickled seaweed would be common as well. Or sometimes maybe you just use simply salt and sprinkle on top of the rice. So on top of that, you would pour the tea. It might be green tea, it might be hojicha. Depending on the style, it would be dashi as well. And then you would enjoy. It will be a delicious ochazuke that way. So today, what we're gonna do is instead of pouring green tea or hojicha on top, we're gonna use genmaicha. We're gonna directly put the genmaicha on top of the rice so you can actually enjoy those crunchy brown rice kernels, not just the tea itself. So that's gonna be very delicious. I'll show you how to do that. Okay, making a genmai-chazuke is actually very straightforward and very easy. All you have to do is take a bowl of rice, and then as you can see, I have a bowl of rice in here. And on the bowl of rice, I directly added the genmai tea that we created earlier in this video onto the bowl of rice, almost like a furikake, almost like a topping. And then for the topping, I'm using a pickled plum today. This is my favorite topping for an ochazuke. But again, as I mentioned, you can use lots of different types of toppings. Something salty, something strong would be nice. And all we have to do is put boiling water inside, let it sit for 30 seconds or so, and then it's ready to eat. So here we go. I'm just gonna pour this hot water directly into the bowl. And then just like that. Oh, you can smell the aroma of the genmai lifting up already. And then we'll just wait for the tea to steep. Now that we waited for 30 seconds, we'll see how it tastes like. Itadakimasu. I spilled some, but it's very delicious. It's super yummy. The crunchiness of the genmai makes this ochazuke fantastic. And this is something you really have to try. The sencha leaves is also really good as well. I recommend you use either sencha leaves or gyokuro leaves for this. And don't use leaves that are a little bit harder. So the bancha-based genmaicha, the stem teas, kugicha or karigane, these might be a little bit hard or tough to eat as well. And then like hojicha genmaicha would be a little bit tough as well. So I would stay away from those. Stick to the softer tea leaves based Japanese green tea. So again, gyokuro or sencha would be fantastic choices to use as a genmai-chazuke. And my recommendation is ume. So pickled plums is fantastic, but again, lots of topics would work here as well. Please do try. This is absolutely fantastic. It's really amazing. It's healthy too. Now, thank you for watching till the end of this video. If you made it to the end of the video, you know more about Genmaicha than probably 99.99% of the Japanese people. So congratulations, good on you. Thank you again, and I hope you add comments, I hope you like, I hope you share, save, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next video.